Hello and welcome to Conference Showcase. I'm your host, Gary Leland, bringing you another episode of Conference Showcase from a clinic I attended. Now, if you found my show on Facebook, YouTube, or any other video sharing site, I ask that you please check out my website located at conferenceshowcase.com. It's the place to find all the videos that I'm going to record and edit and put up from all the conferences that I'm going to attend. Now, if you're enjoying this episode, please tell your friends about Conference Showcase and help us grow. On this episode, I'm bringing you a session from Podcamp Dallas. Now, Podcamp Dallas was held a long time ago, October 2012. If you're not familiar with Podcamp Dallas, you should really check out their website. It's at podccampdallas.com, of course. Now, in this episode, I'm bringing you a session with Mason Pelt, and it's titled Lighting for Videos. Let's watch it now.
So basically, if your end result is not this and is this, you don't need green screen. All right, so now that I have that one out of the way and I don't have to answer questions, I'm going to talk a little bit about color temperature, types of lighting, and then basic lighting setups. And I'm actually going through this a lot faster than I planned to, but whatever. So color temperature, basically the takeaway from this is that not all light is the same. When I look at color temperature, I see this diagram. I can look at that, and that's comforting and familiar. It's like a friend that's always there for me, and it tells me that color temperature is measured in degrees Kelvin, that the lower the degrees Kelvin, the warmer the color, and that the higher the degrees Kelvin, the cooler the color. That daylight is roughly 5,600, and the tungsten is roughly 3,200. It's absolutely nothing like a bipolar model. It's awesome, and it's there, and it's meaningful. No one else thinks of it that way. So this is a picture of my friend Stu Youngblood, and the color balance on this slide right now is on this picture right now is 5,600. Now that's roughly daylight, and why that's important, I lit him with daylight, and we were at a restaurant called Spoozy in Uptown Dallas, where the background was all tungsten. So the background looks orange, and he looks, well, normal, because my white balance is daylight. When I change the white balance to 3,200, which is tungsten, the background is white balanced correctly, meaning if I had a sheet of paper back there and it's white, the sheet of paper is white in the background, and the further forward it moves, the more blue it gets. It's the reverse if I were to do it with the 5,600 balance. The further forward is, the more white it is. The further backwards, the more orange. And then here are three different color balances just to show you. 3,200 on the left, 5,600 on the right, and then in the middle, 4,400, which is not just me splitting the difference. 4,400 degrees Kelvin is actually the most common temperature for fluorescent lighting indoors now. These are probably about 4,400. These might be closer to daylight, but anyway. Now, types of lighting. And I'm just going to go over on a budget because no one can afford a light that costs as much as a car. None of us are broadcasters. I don't think anyone's working on a high-budget film right now. If you are, please call me because I'd love to work on one. So I'm just going to go over two types of lights that I own and one that I borrowed. These are the Brightech really, really bright softbox kits. They're really huge, and I almost brought them today, but I didn't want to collapse them because they are enormous. They're now $550. What's irritating about that to me, I paid $1,500, $500 per light 2 years ago. So these are phenomenal. I've used them on like 60 of the 100 or so, or 170 so projects. 170 projects I've worked on. Then there are these little cheap Cowboy Studio 3-point light kits, and there are 4 lights shown in the picture because I was lazy. Awesome, cheap, not as bright as the Brightechs, but really portable. Then there is a China ball stand and light bulb that you can purchase at Walmart. The only problem with this, the light bulb is not color balanced. You can fix that with buying a color balanced bulb, but it's a little more expensive. So now for something that I think people will actually care about, lighting setups. And my subheading is somewhat sarcastically what you wanted me to talk about while I was showing you a graphic of color temperature and kind of whining about events that happened in my life. I didn't have room to put all of that. So basically, one light Rambo setup. This is with the China ball, really stupid simple. And if you have $25 to the budget, this is what you should be doing for your podcast. Diagram. There is a stand, and the China bulb is hanging off of the stand directly in front of the talent's face. My camera's a few feet back, and that's what's giving me good depth of field. This is what that looks like. Now, this is at, those are my settings in the bottom, 75 millimeters, 60th shutter speed, f-stop 6400, or f-stop 2.8, ISO 6400, and white balance is daylight. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to tell as much on this projector as I would like for you to, but this is what the color-corrected version looks like. Because the bulbs in those were not color temperature balanced, and they actually vary quite a bit from light to light. So it's not like you can just figure out, oh, it's 3600 or something. No, you're going to have to change it with each light bulb. So you have to color balance on these. And then side by side, without color correction on the left, and with color correction on the right. And I think the one color corrected looks a lot better. The one that's not is pretty green. And I'm not sure how well that's coming up on the projector. So then 3-point light kit with really cheap lights. These are 80 bucks. Diagram. And this is where I start to explain things. We have a light on the side of her that's really bright. This light right here, it's lighting this side of her face. This light that's basically filling in a little bit of the shadow, and then a hair light. And that's actually functioning more as a backlight. So, this is what it looks like in full screen. Again, the breakdown, and I'll go ahead and explain. We call these key light, fill light, and hair light. And basically, key light is the brightest light. It's illuminating the vast majority of her face. Fill light's filling in any kind of shadows, or a little bit, and I made it a little bit lighter, or a little bit less bright, less intense, so that way I can have the nice modeling and have a little bit of a shadow on her face. And then a hair light / backlight. And then here's what each one of these lights looks like individually, so you can really see what they're doing. Key light, fill light, backlight. There's not a ton to go over with this setup. It's pretty standard. You can modify it. You can add extra lights. I can add 10 lights in the background if I want. I can add extra lights on the foreground. But most lighting setups, in film at least, start off like this. So, key light, fill light, backlight. And then all together. So that's kind of an idea of what it looks like. Now this is the 3-point lighting setup that I use most commonly with this particular kit, the Brightex. And the diagram is exactly the same, just I use much bigger and much brighter lights. And as you can see, she is a lot brighter. Something else that I want to show you, which here now that it's in full screen, you can see that my ISO, if any of you are familiar with exposure settings, then it's one stop lower. If you're not, just understand that these lights are enough brighter that I can make my image cleaner. So key light, fill light, and backlight, and you can see how much brighter these are, because actually in this case, the key light and the fill light both really are usable images with just one light bulb. And actually, I really like the look that I had on the key light and fill light. And the backlight, I could have tweaked a little bit. So key light, which is, I'm really proud of that photo. And then fill light, which would probably be something I would use in an interview where I'm not going for any kind of stylized look. And backlight, which I could have moved the lamp forward instead of behind her head, and it would have fixed a lot of the shadowing and looked pretty good. So this is what it looks like all together. Questions? I went through that really fast. Also, I hate the look of this question slide. So questions. And you can ask more of them, and I will take more clothing off of her in the slideshow.
So, do you like using? I mean, there are other lights just like your Brightex kit that are just as affordable, just like Kinos or any of those kits. Do you ever use those fluorescents? What's your thought of those?
I love Kinos, but they're not really affordable. Like, you know.
Well, I mean, there's a flow light, right? So
Okay.
there's knockoff brands. That's what I'm talking about. So
There are knockoff brands. I haven't had a ton of good experience with those, to be honest. Like some of them are okay, but typically, like, if I'm gonna buy a cheap light, I just go with the Cowboy Studio. I don't like cheap tube lights because you're essentially talking about putting a light that you might use in your house into a 4-bank flow setup with barn doors, and it's really just not bright enough. It's like it's the difference between the $80 Cowboy Studio kit and the Brightex kit that's $550, except I'm paying $550 to still not be bright enough. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of those. Heading off another question, why do I always use daylight? I hate tungsten light. It doesn't look good on skin. It's weird. It causes light refraction actually within skin cells, so it doesn't look as clean. If you're gonna light someone who is not white, you basically will notice they don't look good in tungsten light. If you are albino, you can use tungsten, that's fine. Otherwise, assume you're going to, or you should use daylight. It's gonna look better. Any other questions? Please ask them because I'm like 20 minutes early.
So
Oh, here, she has the microphone. Let her go first. She's louder than you.
Real basic and kind of like low end. When you're outside, daytime,
Mhm.
do you still bring your extra lighting with
Yes.
you? It will make that much of a
I do
difference.
with the Brightech kit. It makes a huge difference because those are literally bright enough to compete with the sun. With the Cowboy Studio, not so much, but I will use them for when I'm outside. I'll typically use a reflector or something.
What wattage? What wattage lights are those?
What wattage are the Brightechs? I believe. Hang on, let me actually check. I had it written somewhere. So checking types of lighting. Yeah, 4,000 watt. So they're pretty big and look really nice. All right, Jay.
So in post, like, what are you using to color correct? Say, for instance, if I don't have the budget to do that, and I do want to go ahead and do it in post. Like,
So I use DaVinci Resolve, which I'm aware does not help you at all because it's like a $12,000 program. There is a free version, which I'm aware also doesn't help you at all because there's a really steep learning curve. But you can actually do a color correction like that using iMovie. You can do it using Final Cut Pro X, which is $300, and you can actually now in the new version do it using Windows Movie Maker. You can do simple color corrections. And it looks a lot like the sliders in Lightroom, in Windows Movie Maker, that is. It's just moving it, like more orange, more blue. That's, I think, actually what it says.
Yeah, so if you're doing outdoor shots, do you use any bounce lighting reflective?
Yes, I use reflectors pretty heavily outdoors. A lot of times I actually have a 10 by 12 silk that I will hang, and I'll use that to block most of the daylight. And then what the result of it is, if I'm in bright sunlight, I've created a roof that is a white sheet. And it softens the light and it actually does a really good job of lighting. And then I might use some small lights underneath to kind of take out shadows under the chin. Or I might use a reflector for that. Anyone else? AJ?
The first lighting setup you showed,
Yeah?
the first light setup you showed with the little bulb there,
Mm-hmm.
is there any reason that you didn't have a reflector in front to kind of bounce light up indoor?
Because I was trying to do this in as just quick and lazy a way as possible.
Sure.
Like-
But in that typical setup though, I mean.
Oh, in that typical setup,
would you
I
generally-
usually
because your
would.
face is kind of dark in the front.
Yeah, I usually would do that.
Okay.
Usually what I would have done is taken a reflector, because this was set up, it was interview style. It was literally, her sitting in a chair if I were lighting for a news interview, like that.
Sure.
So what I normally would have done is had a reflector almost in her lap,
Okay.
which is bouncing light up, so it's taking out some of the chin light and all that. And I kind of didn't do that. One, because I was too lazy to dig through all of my gear and find a reflector, which I'm aware is really, really lazy. And then two, because we were already joking about the fact that she looked like a vampire, and so I almost went for a horror film lighting setup.
Sure.
Also with these, there's no reason I couldn't have used a 2 or 3 point kit with it. Another random bit of trivia, it's not just people with no budget who use China Globe and a bulb. There's a TV show, it's called Downton Abbey. I don't know if any of you have watched it. It's pretty high production value British TV show. They are shooting in a historic castle, basically, British manor. They can't scuff the floors. They can't do anything. And what they use are China globes with color-corrected bulbs and helium balloons. That's how they light most of their scenes indoors, because they can't put anything on the floor. So they're running really big, like industrial helium balloons and hanging a China globe off of them. That's how they light hallways and cramped bedrooms and things like that, where they would be afraid of scuffing the floor with the C-stand.
I had taken a class once on video, and
you were talking about trying to find a reflective. For some of my videos, I've actually gone, used like a high bulb above and just something like a piece of white paper in front of me to reflect back up and up. So anything that's reflective, it doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
you know, in a pinch. It doesn't have to be, you know, store-bought. Anything that's got a reflective surface will work in a pinch. And especially when you're on a budget too.
Mm-hmm. No, I use tinfoil a lot, actually.
Yeah.
It's kind of, did interviews for a client. They are a multi-million-dollar private equity firm. Had like a senior VP of acquisitions. And I took his desk and I covered it in tinfoil strips. And it was because I didn't bring a lot of the gear that I was expecting or that I would normally bring, because I was told, oh, this is just a quick video. They just want to do an interview. We're going to be in a setup area. They lied, and I didn't have enough gear. So I went to their kitchen, grabbed a thing of tinfoil, and I'm laying this over contracts that were probably $1 million deals. He didn't look really happy with me, but the video did look good. Matthew?
Yeah, I had a question about what you would do in a situation where you would bring in lights, like additional lights into a setting where you also want to be using kind of top lighting, and then kind of also with that, I guess the emphasis would be like, you know, different color temperatures coming at the client at once, and then also your take on using different color temperatures creatively.
Okay, so the picture that I had of my friend Stu down here, that's I would say a pretty creative use of different color temperatures. Like the background's basically red, foreground's basically correct white balance. And I think that looks really good, and I like doing that. A lot of my shots actually look that way. As far as mixing different color temperatures, my normal preference is turn off all of the lights and bring in your own, if that's possible, if you're not trying to do a mix, if you're not going for something like that. I'm aware you can't always do that, so it almost becomes be creative with your manual white balance. So you sort of split the difference between it. Like if I realize I'm using these, which are 4400, and daylight, which is like 5600, my white balance might be like just an even 5000.
You found that successful just to split the difference?
It's moderately successful. I mean, what it is, it's almost easier if you're a colorist to do that and then be able to do temperature controls. Because every image that I've shown you so far was a raw image, which if that has no meaning to you, just assume about 10 times as much dynamic range and color control as I'm going to have in a video that is, 8 bits. Typically these are 32. Yeah, but you can mix color temperatures. Like I've done it before on a lot of client stuff. Sometimes what I'll do, and this is actually used for the Cowboy Studio lights, I will set those down because they're really low stands. If I have these lights and those lights, I'll basically just get it bright enough directly below the person. And it's kind of awkward for them. Like they have to look up like that, which causes their chin to look better, and they're usually happier with the way they look in it, but they're really uncomfortable while shooting. I'll lay 3 or 4 of those in the floor, shoot them directly up, and then the light above them will be a different color temperature, but it almost looks artistic because I'm getting most of their face and body illuminated with the color temperature I want to use, and in that case I white balance to daylight or whatever color temperature my bulbs are on the ground, and then I let it look like there's a hair light almost.
So you usually color balance to the ones that you're intending to have a color balance for?
Yeah, you color balance to ones you intend to have a color balance for most of the time. The thing is, if you don't have an option to choose a color balance, if you have to be wrong, go with what the dominant color is, because it's then closer to correct. So, for instance, if I'm out during 5 o'clock in the evening, where daylight's still supposedly 5600, but it's getting warmer, the light's becoming more and more orange. If I'm going to make an error, what I want to do is err on the side of orange, because otherwise I'm taking out these really beautiful tones that are being generated by this orange light. And also, if I'm out filming in the snow, I would much rather err on the side of blue, because otherwise I'm clipping and I'm cutting out colors that I would maybe want, because maybe it looks more beautiful that way. So I don't want orange snow. It's the reason we refer to it as warm and cool. If you're watching snow, it looks blue. If you look at fire, it looks orange. That's the main reason for that reference. So if my snow looks like fire, it's confusing. Like, I should learn to stop doing that and also figure out how this mic works, because I can't tell if I should speak directly. Oh, that is what I should have been doing. I'm used to this. I'm gonna do this now. Hello, ladies. Look at your man. No, ask a question.
I'm hogging the mic, I'm sorry.
That's
And I
fine.
had
Just
one
don't
thing.
overrun the room.
I always get so tripped up and I can't seem to remember what color balance nighttime is. So I'll go out and then there'll be some orangish lights coming out of buildings and then some green and some blue lights. Is there like a standard nighttime color balance?
No.
Because it's just black.
Just guess.
Okay.
Guess at whatever the dominant thing is. Like I did a shoot on 635 where we were looking at the Reunion Tower and the Omni Hotel, which have totally different light temperatures on the outside of the building. So we just guessed. Like, you know, there was no way to make them look like they were the same color temperature, so we just kind of chose what looked best. And I think we actually shot it 2 times. Because, like, did you want the Omni Hotel to be red? Did you want the Reunion Tower to be purple? Like, that was kind of the choice we made. I'm not kidding, I'll show you photos. Question?
I'm looking for a specific product recommendation. We do a lot of run and gun stuff at conferences.
Yeah.
Lighting in conference halls tends to be constant stuff that's like 15 feet up, but there's unpredictable lighting and shadow situations. My primary, medium budget, you know, durability is a factor because we travel a lot with it, obviously. So, any thoughts on what we? Oh, DSLR bodies is what we're shooting with.
Okay. So, yeah, LED panels is the answer. Actually, if you think of it, the way we would light that for photography, use a flash unit and stands, and you're setting those up, and it's great because they're battery powered because you're only using one shot. So if you don't want to have to haul extension cords around or these massive heavy battery packs, what you do is you get the LED lamps, like the big ones. Cowboy Studio makes pretty cheap ones. They're not huge. They're, you know, this size, fairly good size. And you get some cheap Cowboy Studio stands, and you MacGyver a way to fix them. Actually, you can get a screw to hot shoe adapter. You put this the light onto the hot shoe adapter, you screw the hot shoe adapter onto the stand, and then you have this just moving light that you can walk over, set down, turn the light on, and basically you get 3 of those, and you can use that as a quick 3-point lighting setup at a conference. Assume one person can carry all 3 stands, and it's kind of a pain. And then you have someone carrying the camera separately. So it's a 2-man crew at a minimum, but it does work. And it's pretty cheap to do that. I mean, you're talking about maybe $200 to buy all the gear. So that would be my recommendation.
Great.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh.
So in the last video you showed where you're using the really bright lights, the background is also a lot brighter, and that might distract from her.
Yeah, so again, this comes down to me being lazy.
Okay.
Normally what I would have done is taken flags, which are just sheets of paper, or sheets of fabric that are on a metal frame, or a plastic frame. And I take those, I put them on a stand, and I block the background, so that I'm basically keeping the background black. I kind of liked this look, so part of it was also I was trying to show different looks, and with the Cowboy Studio, most of the light was on her. Even though it was dimly lit, most of it was on her. And the background was pretty dark, so I was just trying to show you can make the background brighter. Like I can show you stuff where I actually did, as a creative choice, made her darker and the background overly exposed. I don't know that it's always a great idea to do that. Like typically your goal is to have the background be about 1 stop lower. You usually, as a rule of thumb, don't want the background and the foreground to be at the same exposure, unless you're shooting green screen, but I don't want to talk about that. I really strongly don't want to talk about that. Don't do it. If you're going to do it, hire me. I laughed directly into the mic again. I really don't like this directional mic, Mark. I blame you.
It was cheap.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Do you use any gels or anything?
All the time,
Yeah.
actually.
Which ones?
You're now asking me a question I don't even know. I go to Amazon, I search for jelly pack, I buy this cheap assortment of CTO, CTV, different color temperature gels, and clothespins, which we call C47s, because at Paramount they were kept in bin C47.
Universal.
It was Universal? Damn, I've been wrong for so many years. I blame Greg.
You're older than Greg.
Greg was the one who told me Paramount. Any other questions? I Cam had one.
Yeah, I just wondered if you keep saying color correcting light or color correcting bulb. What is that exactly? I mean, do you go to Home Depot and say, hey, I need a color correcting bulb, and they come in different ones?
What you would be doing is, like, if you go to Home Depot, they're going to have 3 temperatures of light right now. They're going to have white light, daylight, and then tungsten in their fluorescent bulb section. Those are approximations of daylight, tungsten, and white light, and they're good enough for home use. Like, they might vary by 500 degrees, so it's not a huge deal unless you're doing video. So if you want to get lights that are perfectly color balanced, you can even go pretty cheap. You can go to like Cowboy Studio or something like that where they're not expensive lights, but you go to a Pro Photoshop or even really cheap Pro Photoshop, and that's where you're gonna be able to find things that are mostly color accurate.
Okay.
And what I'm meaning by that is if it says it's daylight, it's 5600, and then the next bulb that I take off the shelf that also says it's daylight at 5600, not 5100. So, or that it's not tinted green, because that was what happened with Mitch's Walmart bulb. Is it was daylight, it was also green, and you can be both.
I bought 3 of them, 3 different lights, and from shooting with all 3 now, even though they're all the same exact bulb, they look one of them looks perfect without correcting.
Why didn't we use that
I don't know
one?
which one of the 3, because they all look the same when you just look at them.
Yeah.
But one is green and the other goes a little bit warmer. So they're not very consistent. So you'll probably want to spend a little bit more money.
Yeah,
It's an experiment.
It's really
$10,
worth it.
so
Like
it's worth
for even a Pro Photo bulb like that, you're talking about $12. Like you're talking 50% more maybe than it is to go buy a bulb at Home Depot.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little bit more of a pain because you have to either order online or have a Pro Photo store. We live in Dallas and we have like the most notable cheap photo equipment place in the world in Allen. So go to Cowboy Studio. Yes.
They actually don't like for you to show up there.
I'm well aware of that. I'm very, very well aware of that. And yet, if I'm going to go there and I'm going to spend $2,000, they can deal with it.
I show up too.
But no, I know they don't like you to go there.
They want you to order online?
Yes.
I don't want to
So
see
you can order
people.
from Amazon. They're on Amazon.
Jeff?
One notable thing about color temperature lights, I have to plug one of our companies.
All right.
There's a company kickstarting here in the Gravity pretty soon called iLumi, and they're making color temperature, color changing bulbs that are controllable by your Android phone. So we'll put that link out.
Yes.
I'll get
What's
it
her
nice
name?
to do. iLumi, ILUMI, and they're gonna launch a Kickstarter I think next week. Jennifer?
I would like to play with that.
Yeah, we'll get a couple, get some stuff out with Mason.
Like I
put
will,
together.
I can use them on like a video project that I'm doing, and then plug them in the description of that.
No worries, Mason. We'll sync up, but yeah, we'll get some stuff out for you guys for
Please give me
these
those
color
lights.
changing bulbs.
I want those. Any other questions? I can answer things not related to video lighting as well. I can't talk about audio, although I'm doing a really poor example right now, speaking in a microphone. I promise I don't normally do this. I blame Ramsey for sound mixing.
I just had a quick statement kind of thing. I just want to make sure she doesn't get the wrong word in her head. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Cam. You said color correcting bulb. He actually said color corrected. I just wanted to make sure that if you go out kind of shopping that you don't get confused with the terminology.
So it's color corrected.
It's a color corrected
like-
bulb. It's
like
not
a color accurate,
correcting.
basically.
I just want to make sure that you didn't, I feel like I sound like an asshole right now. Yeah. You said the wrong word. I just want to make sure that you didn't try to shop for a color correcting bulb and be like, all I can find are color corrected bulbs, you know? I just want to make sure you got it right. So.
All right, Ben had a question mark.
If you're doing like a conference interview, what kind of mic do you use?
So that one I really like. If you have someone, how is it set up? Do you have someone interviewing, or is it just like, are you basically having a camera set up on the person and you're just having them answer questions, or is it going to be a two-person interview like a journalist?
Well, both ways.
Okay, so both ways for a journalist. They have a microphone and they say, "Hey, so you're so and so with this company, and tell us a little bit about what you do." That's the best way. If you have someone who is being interviewed, where you're basically saying, "Hey, I'm grabbing you from this conference. I want you to stand in front of the camera. I'm going to stand behind the camera because I don't have a journalist here, and we're going to do a quick interview." It's going to be edited pretty differently, so you're at that point going more or less for sound bites. But that really doesn't have anything to do with how you mic them. I would recommend a lavalier or a shotgun mic. And how I would do that is typically put the shotgun mic on a boom stand and set it above them just out of frame, or mic them myself with a lavalier, which I do actually know how to do, although, again, poor example of that. I promise you, I can do audio almost as well as I can do lighting.
It worked for everyone else. So weird.
Yes. I think you intentionally screwed up the gain controls over there. I blame you. I blame you, Ramsey.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this week's session. Make sure and check back for future video sessions from Podcamp Dallas, as well as other sessions that I attend. Now, before I go, I want to share something with you. I really am kind of excited about this. I've started an e-magazine for the iPad. It's really doing great. Now, I have no background in publishing at all, but I found it a snap. Now, if you've ever thought that you'd like to publish an e-magazine, but you really don't know how to do it or where to go, you may want to visit Madcast. That's the service I use to create my magazine. Like I said, it's easy. Actually, it's almost foolproof. You can see for yourself, though, at madcast.fastpitch.tv. That's my affiliate code, of course. But that's all for today, so until the next episode, this is your host, Gary Leland, saying goodbye, and thanks for watching.